Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Chapter 1 walkthrough slash demo. So for this past week, you guys should have been going over things to do with getting introduced to GIS and what a GIS is. And then in lab, you guys are actually going to get introduced to the software you guys will be using for the semester, which is ArcMap. The version that you use might be different. You might be using ArcMap 10.3, which is the most recent, or if you have one of the older versions like 10.2 or 10.2.2. There aren't many differences between the three, so you guys should still be able to follow along pretty well. So what we're going to do today is I'm just going to actually go over the basics of opening ArcMap and making sure that you guys know exactly what tools you guys need to look at and where to find things. We're not going to go into super depth because that's what your labs will do, but I just want to make sure that you guys know how to turn on extensions or how to save a file and things like that. So let's go ahead and get started. So as you can see, I already have an ArcMap document open and there's nothing on it, and that's because I haven't added any data. But if you are wondering how to get to ArcMap, the way that you do that is you would go to your Start menu, which you can't see on this. Now you can. And depending on where this is located, you should be able to find an ArcGIS folder. And then you have different options. You have Arc Catalog, which is something that you guys will become familiar with in the first lab. And that's basically the Arc version of your Windows Explorer file system. Then you have ArcGlobe, which you guys probably won't be using. And then you have ArcScene, which is what people can use to do 3D visualization, but probably not something you guys will use in this class. And then you have ArcMap 10.2.2, at least in this case. You might be using 10.3. I just haven't updated my computer to that just yet. So you would click on that, and you should get this type of window, which is basically saying that it's starting the program. And then as soon as that is finished, the background that we started with is what will pop up onto your screen. So now I have a blank, untitled ArcMap. This will not pop up on your screen because you all do not have a business analyst desktop extension, so just disregard this. But this is what should pop up on your screen when you are open and in Arc. So we're going to go over a couple things before we add any data to this so you guys know where things are. In your file drop down, you have several of your main file functions that you would have with any other application. So you have new. So if you want a new ArcMap document, then that's where you would go. Or you can open an existing one, or you can even save or save as according to a couple, whatever you need the format to be in. You do have a couple other things. So this sign in is for people that have an Arc Online license. You guys will probably not use that in the first few labs, but you may or may not end up needing it for an editing lab. So this is where you would actually sign into that online service. And then the print and page setup is actually where we'll be doing some of the map setup, so we'll go over that a little bit later. And then if you want to save the map, that will also be part of the end of this little tutorial. Then you have like current files, so obviously I've had several files open in ArcMap recently. And then you have map document properties. So one of the first things I want to do before we even look at anything else is go to map document properties. And this is important for whether or not you are using this map on different computers. So whenever you add data to a map, your computer remembers where you save that data. Well, if you use a different computer, you may not have the exact same file path because the hard drive might be named differently. So the C drive on one computer may not be the same as the C drive on another computer. In order to make sure that your maps can usually find the data that you've already saved and have access to, you always want to check path names to store relative path names. So this should always be checked, and you should actually do this before you do anything else to the lab document, because otherwise it actually doesn't necessarily save the settings. So we're going to automatically do that, and then we're just going to get out of map document properties. So now we're going to go and look at these little buttons and see which ones you guys need to actually get your data going, and we'll go from there. So this toolbar right here that I'm going to bring out, this is your Tools toolbar. You use this when you have data set. So since we're not there yet, but that is the first one we're going to look at, you're going to go to this little button here. It's a plus sign on top of an orange square. That's your Add Data button. Now if you just click on it, it will ask you to add data. And as you can see, you will get some of the files. And in this case, you only actually have two types of data that you can use. So you can do a table. So if you have an Excel table, you would actually choose which sheet in that Excel sheet you wanted. Or in this case, this is a shapefile. If we were to go somewhere else in my large array of data, so for example, we came into here and we went to data. So you can have shapefiles. You can also have things in a geodatabase. And so here you actually have feature classes that are in a geodatabase, but we won't get into those more depth. This is just to show you when you are adding data, this is what this will look like. So we're going to go ahead and do all of the base counties in Idaho. So we're going to add data. So all I did there was double click on the shapefile or feature class that I wanted to add. So this is where the tools come in. So I'm actually going to put this back up here where I like it to be. So the zoom in tool, this little hand thing that's already on is the pan tool. And basically what you do is if there is a hand, you can basically pan the data around to wherever you want. This is important if you're using zoom or zoom out because then you can get to places you really want to look at. So for example, this is your zoom in tool. And anytime you hover over any of these tools, it actually does give you a little description box that says exactly what it is and how you use it. So we're going to go to zoom in, and we're going to zoom into Latah County. And say that I want to look at this from a more complete perspective, then I would use the pan tool to actually move the map over or around. If I want to go back to the previous extent or the previous version of the map before I zoomed in, you would press back. So, say that you don't like where you ended up, you just press back. Or you can go forward again. So, it's kind of like the back button in a Word document. So then, if you want to just zoom all the way back out, you would go to zoom to full extent. And there you go. So, a couple of the other tools that you automatically get with the toolbar is you get the select elements. So that gives you just your regular mouse pointer. And you can also use this to say that you have to do some other type of function where you actually need this arrow. You can click on it. That comes up more with editing, which you guys will learn about in a few more chapters. And then you also get the identity tool. Now this is a fun tool, or identify tool. The purpose of the identify tool is basically say that you want to know what something is, but you don't actually want to select it. That's where you would use identify. So if you click on something, this little table will pop up. So I clicked here. This will tell you what attribute is part of that shapefile or feature class. So in this case, it's boundary county. And then it'll tell you things that you have in here. So I actually don't have a lot of information for the county shapefile, but it does tell me the shape length and the shape area. And then here I have the economic region that it's part of and the public health districts it's part of. So they're both part of region 1. This information is all tied to the attribute table. So if you right click on base counties and go to open attribute table, this is a table that will tell you everything that is in the shapefile. So you have the shape type, so this is a polygon feature class or shapefile. You have the county name, so if I were to click here, Ada down here would be selected. And then since it's in a geodatabase, you automatically get a shape length and a shape area field. Those are automatically calculated based on whatever your projection is, and you guys will go over those in chapter 2. And then I have additional information for each county input, like the economic region they're in, and then the public health district. If you have other types of data like census data, you might have things like population data and so on. So your identify tool is directly linked to your attribute table. So we're going to go ahead and close these and go to the next function. So you do have an HTML pop-up, which isn't really going to apply to anything to you, that you guys have, but basically if a feature actually has an HTML associated with it, it will actually pop up. This is another fun one that you guys will end up using for the editing, but it's basically a measure tool. And so if you go here, which is the show total, that will either show you the total of how much you measure, or it will just show you totals of segments. Here is where you get to choose your units. So say that you don't want kilometers or meters, you prefer miles or even feet. So we'll do miles. If you want to clear the results, we'll get to that. And then you can also choose the measurement type. So we're going to start with planar, and that's basically just drawing a line. So here's your little measure tool. Actually, we're going to zoom in. And we're going to measure how many miles across Latah County is according to the shapefile. So click the measure tool. We're going to start here. So you click once, and then you double click wherever you want to end. And if you look up back here at your measure box, this says that Latah County is 33.72 miles across. Say that you want another segment to add to that. So we'll do that. So we'll do up and down. So that's 29.59. But then you can actually stop if you click once and make another segment. So if you look up back at the box, in the measure box, it'll actually tell you how long the segment is, which is 26 miles, but the total length of both of those lines is now 56. So the measure tool can come in handy, especially if you need to know the distance between 2 points, or even if you're doing a very basic road analysis. Oh, this will take me this long to get there. So then you also have the find. So if you do find, sometimes you are able to actually find a very specific location. So visible layers basically means any layer that is in your table of contents that is turned on. What that means, so we're going to zoom out real quick so you guys can see this. If a layer is turned on, you can see the layer. If a layer is turned off, it goes away. So that's what it means by visible layers. And say we want to find Bannock. So we're going to type in Bannock. And this can look through any field, so you don't actually have to tell it which one, but say you were, and say that we would want to find Bannock County. You would say find. And you would click on it, and it would zoom right to Bannock County. So, okay. So the other tools you guys can kind of mess with, but for the most part, you guys aren't going to be dealing with those. The other two important ones that you do care about are the selection tools. So this tool right here is the Select Features tool. And what you can do is, like Ada is currently selected, you can actually select out features of interest. So say, for example, I'm interested in the public health region for Region 2. That consists of these 5 counties. So you have Latah, Lewis, Nez Perce, Clearwater, and Idaho. I was able to select those by pressing down and just making a square. If I were to do the same thing up here, these would be unselected because I'm no longer selecting them in that boundary box. You also have a couple other options for selection. So the default is to select by rectangle, but you can also build a polygon, or you can do a circle, which is, you know, pretty perfect for a circle shape. Or you can even do a line. So say that you have a road and you want it to follow, I want anything that intersects with this line. It will select whatever counties intersect with that. So we're going to go back to rectangle. So we're going to select this area and say that we want to look at that in the attribute table. Anything that is selected on the map will be highlighted in blue in your attribute table. So if you're looking at a very specific area and you want to know exactly what is in those places, you would select them and then come in here. And so here, if this is already chosen, then that means you're seeing all the attributes in the table. If you just want to look at the selected ones, you would click on the smaller box, and that would give you the information. At the bottom here, you'll see that it says 5 out of 44 selected. What that basically is telling you is that there are 5 out of the 44 attributes that are selected, or in this case, the attributes are counties. So 5 out of the 44 counties in Idaho are currently selected for Region 2. And as you can see, they're Public Health Region 2. So Once you're done selecting things, you just say clear selection. As you can see, your table will go away so long as you are still under show selected records. You have not lost the table. It is right here under show all. So just if that ever happens, just try and see if make sure that it's all showing, not just the selected ones. Okay, so now we're going to go into a couple of the other really important things that you guys will end up using. So this little area of your toolbar here is pretty important. So one of the things that may occur is some people, this is your table of contents, and some people manage to lose them. And what I mean by that is they actually say close. So it doesn't actually get rid of your map, but it gets rid of all the ways that you can manipulate the data in the map. If you ever lose your table of contents, you want to click right here, and it will show back up. And if you don't like where it is, you can actually drag it out, you can resize it, or if you want to put it right back, if you find this little blue arrow and hover over it, it will automatically put it back into place. In the table of contents, you have 5 different options. So in the drawing order, this is basically showing you layers that are listed as they are drawn. So the way that this is important is we're going to add hospital beds. And we're going to get rid of this one. Okay, so this is based on the drawing order. So hospital beds is being drawn first, and then base counties are being drawn underneath that. This is very important because some people will actually think that they lose data if the drawing order is wrong. So what I mean is if you were to put hospital second, all of your dots disappear because your base counties is now the first one drawn. Because it's a polygon, it will completely overtake all of the points. So if you want something to show up on top of a polygon, you either need to drag it to the top or go here to symbology, and this will show up, and choose hollow. And that will make everything show up for you. So that's what the list by drawing order is, and so we're going to go back and change that to a full color. This next one is list by source. So what this does, this is actually going to tell you where your data is located. So say that you can't figure out where your data is, or you have a table. So anytime you add a table, it won't show up in the drawing list because it's not being drawn, it's just a table. But if you do add a table, it'll show up in this list. So one of the things to remember when you are in list by source is you cannot move these. You must go back to list by drawing order in order to change the order of the layers. List by visibility is basically listing things that are on. So if I were to go here and turn this off, base counties is visible, but hospital beds no longer is. So we're going to go turn this back on. And then finally you have list by selection. So nothing is selected currently, but if I were to choose select features and select something, this would tell me how many base counties are selected and which ones they are. And say that I actually selected hospitals, it would do the same for hospitals. So we're going to clear selection again, and that's the table of contents. We're going to go back to the table of contents with the list by drawing order. And we're going to move on to the next thing. So the next window is the Arc Catalog window. And it is basically a built-in window of what you would see if you opened Arc Catalog. And so here you can find all of your folder connections or things like that. In order to make a folder connection, which you will have to do if you do not have any that are pre-made like I do, you want to go to this Connect to Folder button, and you want to navigate to wherever you have data saved. So most of my data is in my Thompson work file. If I go into here, so the data BHS, I will only be able to access data in that folder. I won't be able to access anything else. So sometimes you might want to go a little further out and just choose the drive number. And then you would just say, okay. Nothing's changed here because I already have that folder connected. But if you need to do that, that's how you would go about adding it. So we're going to go ahead and close Catalog. Then this is my favorite window. This is the search window. But we'll come back to that because it ties into the Toolbox window. So several times during your labs, you guys are going to actually have to use ArcToolbox. And ArcToolbox is where you basically get all of your processing functions for Arc. So you have these little toolboxes, and each one is a different toolbox, but it has different functions. And then in each toolbox, you get a different tool drawer, essentially. So this is the box. This is the drawer where the tool is in, and then these are the specific tools that you use. So as you can see, some of these are quite extensive. There is absolutely no way to memorize all of these in one semester, so we definitely don't require you to. But if you're ever bored or just kind of want to look around and see what's there, you are more than welcome to just click in here and see what is actually available. Now, one of the reasons that this is important is because certain tools actually require certain extensions. You guys, if you get the data or the software from U of I, you automatically have access to all of the extensions that you will need. So for example, the spatial analyst tools is very much a part of your raster analysis labs, which will come later on. But that does require an extension. If you ever need to make sure that you have an active extension, you go to Customize, and you go to Extensions. And if that specific extension is checked, that will work. So I'm going to uncheck this and try and do one of these. And it will tell you that it's not licensed. You do have the license, you just have to make sure that the extension is enabled. So if we go back, the tool will now work. So that's definitely something to keep in mind if something's ever telling you that it's not licensed. So that's the toolbox. That's where the search comes in. So search is wonderful if you have absolutely no idea where the tool you need is located. So sometimes I know what I want a tool to do, but I don't necessarily know where I should find it. So for example, say that I want to union, or basically combine, two different layers. What you can do is actually type in combine, so you don't actually know the name of the tool, and it will actually give you a list of different types of tools that will do some sort of combination. So I can actually do a combine, but that is very specifically for rasters. So if you're using vector, it's going to be different. So the search tool can actually be really helpful if you have an idea of what you need done, but you're not sure which tools actually do it. Or for example, say you have no idea, say you have an idea of what tool you need, you just don't know where it is, you would type in the name of the tool and it would show up. So search tool is your friend. Please get familiar with it because it's a wonderful, wonderful feature. Finally, this is the Python window. You guys will not be using that in this class, but what it does is it essentially allows you to do Python programming in Arc. So what used to occur was you had to do that outside of the program, and now you can implement it all in the same place. So that's the basic introduction to getting data in and the types of tools you have. In terms of saving your data, what you would do is say that you have this data and now you want to make a map that you want to save. First off, you have two different views that you're looking at. Right now, if you go down here to the bottom, you are in what is called data view. That means all you're doing is actually looking at the data itself. But say you want to save this as a map that you are going to present to someone, then you want to go to layout view. And you guys will go over this a lot more in a couple other labs. But this is where you actually determine how your map will come out. And so this is where you might also, this is where you would want to use this toolbar, which is the map toolbar. This will actually just zoom in on the data, whereas this will zoom in on the map itself. A little confusing, but you guys will get there a little later on. This is also where the print and page setup comes in. So this map is currently 8.5 by 11 inches. Say that you want something bigger or smaller, this is where you would change that. If you want to change it to a landscape, say we want a landscape map, then you would have to readjust the data frame itself. but that's where you would be able to change the orientation. Finally, say that you want to save the map document. You would go to File, Save, and we'll just save it as Demo1 on my desktop. Anytime I go back in to this specific ArcMap, so we'll have it saved, this is what will open up when I come back to it. And I can still go back to Data View, I can still go back to Full Extent, and I can still go back to Layout View. So now it's just saved in a document to where I don't have to constantly add or change data or data symbology once it's in there. Finally, if you want to save a map, you can go to Export Map, and you can actually save this as a TIFF file or a PDF file. So we'll save it as a PDF. It's obviously not very pretty, but we'll go find it. And that's what your map will look like. So now it's a PDF. So that's the introduction to ArcGIS and getting started. So those are the basic tools that you guys are going to need. And you guys are going to go over those in more detail for Lab 1. But this way you guys at least have an idea of where those are to begin with and how to go from there. Also, please save all changes often and regularly. Have a great day!